to really have the opportunity to, one, network with one another, two, learn from each other, and three, really just be able to help us understand how we can level up. And that's the goal for tonight, is to really learn from everyone up here how we can all level up in our current careers, no matter where we're at today. So, with that said, I'm really excited because, again, as Chantel mentioned, we have a lot of different people up here today with different lenses. Someone from talent acquisition, people who work with candidates every day on a daily basis, helping them with their own professional development, and then someone who has been able to work their way up through corporate America as well. So, really excited to learn from all of you. So let's jump in. Really want first question. Oh, actually, before asking this question, I don't know who you guys are. I get right into it. So I'd love for you guys to introduce yourselves and tell us your story.
Should I start?
Yeah, right there.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet everyone. It's such a pleasure. I'm happy to be here. Hello, fellow sisters in sales. Also known as Rosie. I work at Pandora. I'm a sales executive, account director of multicultural strategy. I'm a former publisher, and that role is kind of becoming obsolete, so we'll talk about things like that and be candid. But I've had a 25-year career in sales, and so happy to share my story. On a personal note, I am a proud Afro-Latina. I'm from Honduras. And I live in New York City. I work a couple of blocks away, and I'm enjoying this experience being here with you guys tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm honored to be sitting here with all of these amazing women, and thank you to Chantel and for everybody that made this happen. My name is Kristen James, and I am Chief Operating Officer of the Council of Urban Professionals. Some of you have heard of us, some of you haven't, so I'll tell you what we do. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been in business now for 11 years, and our mission is to close racial equity and inclusion gaps for professionals of color. So it's right in line with what we're going to be talking about tonight. And so obviously, because of who I am, this work is extremely important to me. It's meaningful, and I get a lot of value out of what I do, and I look forward to being able to share that with you guys tonight. And prior to that, I worked in corporate America. I owned a small company here in New York, and I worked in publishing. And if we have a chance, it's an interesting story. Maybe we'll get to it. But just honored to be here tonight with all of these amazing women, and thank you guys so much for coming out.
Hi everyone, I'm Angelina Darasaw Cheeks, and I'm going to put on my Brooklyn voice. I'm originally from Brooklyn. Hopefully it carries. And hey Brooklyn. And I'm your cousin. I'm from Belize. We have to talk about that. But my connection, so I'm the founder and CEO of a company called C-Suite Coach. We do a lot of things, but it is all geared towards making professional development more accessible for people of color and really supporting organizations through providing access to coaching and program design around coaching. So some of my clients that are really notable are Google, NYU, I've worked with Black Tech Charlotte, a number of different organizations, and I source coaches to those organizations or create programs and trainings for those organizations. My background before that was more on the sales side. The exact title was business development. I worked at Viacom and ESPN beforehand, but I will say after 3 years of running my own business, the key need that you have to have is more than just understanding your product and your service, but you do have to be a salesperson if you want to grow and scale.
Everyone can hear me. My name is Alicia Simmons, and I'm so excited to be here tonight to be with all of you. I am currently a recruiting manager for sales and human resources at Wiley Publishing. So the third person on the panel is probably back. I recently joined Wiley. Prior to Wiley, I was at LinkedIn, recruiting primarily for sales, and I've had the chance to grow within the talent acquisition space across a lot of large organizations, including MasterCard as well as Verizon. So my passion is people and aligning them with opportunities that will essentially take their careers to the next level. There is something very exciting about hearing someone accept an offer or giving feedback and just having them know like, hey, listen, if it didn't happen this time, it'll be next time, and here is why. So I think when folks are on the outside looking to get in, I play a vital role in providing pertinent information and being responsive. So I'm hoping I can provide more insight tonight.
Awesome. Well, thank you, ladies. Again, even more excited after hearing all of that. So let's dive in now for real. So what I'd love to ask all of you, and I'm going to move my chair because I do want to just talk to you guys as well, is ask all of you, what have you seen as a roadblock to prevent women of color from entering sales altogether? Anyone can go first.
I'll start again.
Yeah.
I would say the first roadblock is not knowing about a sales career, right?
Mm-hmm.
How many of us have never really been introduced to it? It's not like there's a sales major in many colleges. And so how do you get involved, I think, is the first thing. And I think internships are a great way. Or just networking with people through LinkedIn or other ways. And finding out more about their career if that's something of interest to you. So I think definitely an entry to barrier is just knowing about it, getting exposed to it. I think the second thing is having the skill set. And so no matter what you do, if your next goal is to be a salesperson, you should ask yourself, what are the skill sets that I need to acquire? What do I really need to learn? And I have to tell you, it's on my agenda every single day. Every single day I'm learning something new at Pandora. I ask myself the question, what am I missing? What do I need to work on? And for each individual, it's different. For me, I made a switch from the world of publishing, which was mostly print and some digital, to the world of technology and audio. And so I had to make sure I did a hand raiser for all kinds of training and development. So being committed to that. And I would say, the third barrier is, sometimes not feeling like culturally it may be the right fit for you. And that's something I guess we can talk about a little bit later, and you might have some follow-up questions.
Yes to everything you said. Yes, and the only caveat I would add is also just knowing all the different places that you can work that have to do with sales. So, for example, I work at a nonprofit. Development is what keeps the lights on, and that's purely sales. So I think just being aware of all of the different places that you can work, and how many different lines of business are driven purely by sales.
I'd agree with that, and as the coach, I would echo thinking about your translatable skill set, because at least that's what I'm hearing both of you have been able to do really well. The other part of it is what I see a lot as a barrier, particularly for women and particularly for women of color, is that confidence gap. Sales does require sometimes a lot of assertiveness, a lot of aggression in certain cases, powerful negotiations, and being able to build up that capacity is really important when in the societies, the way many of us have been socialized and how we've been taught to communicate says we should be doing the opposite of being aggressive. How many black women ever hear being aggressive is like a positive thing, right? But that's needed in sales. So trying to fine tune that and make it something that works within an organization is really important.
Now, can I comment just briefly, because you said something that was important. As a seller, I believe we're selling confidence. Right?
Yeah.
If you're not confident what you're selling, why should anybody sign the dotted line? Right? So it's important to be confident. At the same time, there's a balance between that and being humble. I can tell you my environment at Pandora has made me such a humble person. Not that I wasn't humble before, but just striking that balance. Just wanted to comment.
Thank you, ladies. I think all of that being last, I'm like, I don't even know what to say now. Everyone said everything. But I think as a recruiter who looks at profiles and resumes all day, a lot of it is really being able to identify your transferable skills. What am I doing now? What have I already done? Taking a look at what's being asked of me in this job description and stacking it up against my resume. Is it a match? No. Why? So really taking a very deeper look at what it is you want to do, and then determining, well, what can I bring? What's the value I can add? Where is this? What type of impact can I make? So I think a lot of it is really, I think the roadblock is just learning how to think outside of the box, right? So throwing your hat in the ring for things you typically would never even consider. Being a recruiter, a major function of what I do is sales. I'm selling this culture, I'm selling this role. I have to make this place look and feel like Disney World, and you want to work here, and here's why. I'm selling candidates to hiring managers and vice versa. So to some extent, we're always selling. So it's just a matter of understanding, well, how can I do this, and what have I done that's relevant?
Yeah, absolutely. With my time, before I was even in talent acquisition and even in the space I am now, 7 years of my life has been in sales. And so I've had the opportunity to experience working for a 75-year-old company like ADP, and I've had the opportunity to work for a company that was 8 years old when I joined them at Yelp. And something that I have seen, along the way is just women having a hard time moving from mid-level to that senior level, regardless of where I've been, and maybe where my internships were, or whatever it may be. So I would love to speak with you and ask you this, Roseanne, since you've been able to do it, right? Talk to us about, what are some of the issues that you've seen around, why that happens in the workplace?
Sure. I'll talk to you about the issues, but also what's helped catapult me to that next level, right? And so I think that the first issue usually is, sometimes we work for a company where the C-suite is not necessarily looking to diversify the mix at top levels, right? So it's really understanding the culture of that company that you work for. That said, you really have to place an emphasis on networking with the right people. And so when I say networking with the right people, it's not just people like me, which I think is so important, but they're the advocates. Who are your advocates in terms of, mentorship that you can lean upon to get to that next level? And have an informal conversation and say, hey, I'm thinking about being a publisher or VP. What do you think I need to do to get to that role? What's your opinion? And it may not be someone, let's say, in sales. It may be someone in marketing. It may be someone in HR that's a friend. Right? So that diversified network, I think, is so important. So I've seen some of those barriers, but I'm also, the third thing I want to say is just be a believer in what you want to go after. So as you're sitting there and each of you have goals, and no goal should never seem achievable, but be a believer that you are that person, and then you have to ask yourself, what does it take to get there? And really try and make it happen. But I will say, ultimately, having the confidence in the relationship with people who are making the decisions is the most important. And for me, it's always been my track record. And so one thing about sales, if you can produce, and you produce consistently, at the end of the day, they really care about the revenue. They don't care about pink shoes. They don't care. The pink shoes are lovely. I'm not saying pink shoes are not lovely. But what's great about sales, and especially with the barriers that we have as women of color, is that it's all about the revenue and the profit that you add to the bottom line. And they can recognize you as a sales professional, and if you can always, even in tough situations, behave as a sales professional, as corny as that sounds, I think that that's so important as well.
I love that. And it's true because as sales professionals, we build relationships with the people that we want to bring on board to buy our products or services, whatever it may be. But the best product we're selling is ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we should be building those relationships internally. So thank you. I want this question for Kristen and also for Angelina. And I think it's because you both currently work in a sector now where you're working with people who are looking to get that next job or really work on their professional development. So in that same regard, why do you think there's such a drop-off for people moving up from that mid-level role to that senior title? And either one can go first.
Sure, I can take it first. So one of the things is that we think about a lot is when it's systemic. That's frankly part of the issue, and that oftentimes a lot of the onus is placed on the person of color, the person who's different, to acclimate, assimilate, figure out how to make it work, and not enough is placed on the managers to be intentional and really measure how much they're investing in all of their team, as opposed to just the ones that look like them or the ones that they like. So coming up in 2 weeks, I'm speaking at an equity conference, and I'm leading a training for managers on how to be consciously inclusive. So we put a lot of emphasis and focus on unconscious bias, but it's also important to think about what are the decisions I can make on a day-to-day basis to make sure I'm being equitable with how I'm developing my team. So am I only debriefing with one person after the meeting that I really like and see myself in? Am I, the choices we make all the time, how I walk to the bathroom and who I say hi to. So really encouraging managers to be conscious and think about the choices that they're making to make sure that they're developing all of their team, not just the ones they like and they feel look like them.
So yeah, absolutely. To Angelina's point, I think that the drop-off rate, especially for people that look like us, can be attributed to being stuck. So you feel like you're on one trajectory and you're doing really well and you're really excited about where you're going, and then all of a sudden, boom, you just stop. And then you get frustrated. And then it's like, okay, what am I doing? What's next for me? Why am I here? And then you have that little personal crisis and you start looking for an exit plan, and you can't really focus when you get to that point. So I agree with Angelina's point in that it is important for managers to be intentional, but I think it's also for us, it's important for us to be intentional as well and thoughtful about where it is that you want to go. And if you find yourself in a situation where you're not going to get there, don't be afraid to make the leap. And so I think just being thoughtful and intentional, and it also speaks to your point earlier about being able to identify people that can get you there. Those are all things that will take away from that drop-off rate.
And when you have those key conversations, this may sound so small, but it's so important. There's a right time and a right place for every conversation. It's not stopping your boss when you're running to the bathroom saying, hey, I know people who have done that. You know, hey, does it look like I'm going to get a new position? And it's like, so it's one of those things.
They're actually not promoting you. Great. So now on more of a talent acquisition recruiter standpoint, I'd love to understand from you, I'm sure you've seen a lot of candidates in your career.
Yeah.
Right? All the time. Thousands, I'm sure. What have you noticed that really prevents these candidates from getting the job, from getting that dream role?
Oh man, it varies, right? And I think one of the first things that comes to mind is preparedness. Yes, you want this job for whatever reason. You're relocating, everyone's looking for growth. Yes, I know, you want a promotion, you're not happy where you are, you're ready for the next best thing. But how prepared are you for this interview with me? Because if I'm not impressed, this is it. Like, it just doesn't go beyond me. And it goes beyond, oh, well, tell me what you know about this organization. You could Google that. You could read that to me verbatim, that's fine. But come to me with what's your value prop? What are you looking to bring to this organization? What are you looking to bring to this role? How passionate are you about this? What's next for you? How does this fit into your big plan? I oftentimes speak to folks who are like, hey, I'm in a master's program and then I'm going for my PhD. Well, how does this fit in your plan? Because I want it to all make sense. I would hate for us to make this investment and then 9 months out the door, you're gone. Or this just isn't meeting your expectations. So I think it's very important that you do your research and people truly understand what it is they want to do. And I think the roles that we work on as recruiters, we have to ensure that we are attracting the best talent. And anyone that I speak to, I'm definitely looking for a certain level of confidence, a certain level of excitement and enthusiasm. And I think everyone's reasons for wanting to move on are very personal or professional, whatever it might be. But I think what candidates have to think about is, does this make sense? Yeah. You take a look at where you've been and where you'd like to go, and there's no harm in changing industries. I think that's great. I think diversifying your experience, in my opinion, is super duper attractive. But I think at the end of the day, it has to make sense. So being prepared and doing your due diligence in terms of research, getting connected with as many people at that organization that you're looking to join, ask me 100 questions. Bet me, I don't mind, because I can't think of anyone else who's going to invest the time to give you the kinds of responses that you want other than me. Because I think the recruiters, as a recruiter, I am the brand manager. I am the person giving you the information you want. So leverage that time, leverage that relationship. And I let candidates know, like, hey, listen, I'm looking at your resume, I think you should do this. Even if this opportunity doesn't work out, and you move on to wherever you might go after me, take this piece of information with you. I'm big about giving gems. Like, it's only right.
Yeah.
It's only right. I'm a huge advocate of setting people up for success.
Amazing.
Can I comment one thing on that? I'm so glad you said that. People think that some recruiters or anyone who's hiring has like their worst interests in heart and like they're the enemy, and how you treat and respond to folks hiring can lead to other opportunities. I've gotten opportunities from folks even when it wasn't the right fit for the right time. And recently, even as I'm hiring, I've tried interviewing folks and how they've responded when I really was passionate about them, but maybe there was something that wasn't the right fit, has prevented me from thinking about that future opportunity that could be coming along that I thought they were a better fit for. So I think it's important to be mindful of how you respond and how you treat recruiters when they don't, or anyone hiring, like a small business person, when they don't give you the answer that you definitely wanted and that sure win, because frequently they are thinking, well, I really like this person, what else can I provide them with?
Absolutely. And I think the idea is when you are interviewing, or even if it's an exploratory conversation, that initial interaction we have with you, we would hope that you're presenting the best version of yourself. If this is your A game, then bring it. Because if it's not, then what's supposed to happen beyond today?
Right.
So it's really just about putting your best foot forward. It's a real thing, and I think that's what we're looking for, because you're selling yourself to me, and I in turn have to sell you to this hiring manager who probably wants to hire an intern when I'm like, no, let's think about this person. So it's really just about you giving me all these bits and pieces so I can build this story on your behalf.
Right.
Absolutely. And I think I always get friends asking me for advice when they're starting an interview, and they're always so scared about that phone interview with the recruiter or whatever it may be. But you have to remember, the job of the recruiter is to marry you and their employer. Right? To find that fit, and if they're telling you it's not a good fit, it's probably for the best
Right.
for you,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
And don't think, oh, they don't like me. It's like, no, actually, like based on what you're telling me, I know that this might not be a good fit for you, right?
And then just be open to the opportunities as well that might come out of you having that interaction. Like, I think because we are who we are and we often have an unconventional path, sometimes you have unconventional opportunities come your way. That's certainly been my story, and I'm sure that several people here can attest to that. So if you go on an interview and maybe it doesn't go great, just be open to what opportunities could come even from that single interaction. And if it's a company that you really want to be at, stay engaged with them and keep checking and be proactive. If it's an organization, if it's a person that you really want to be engaged with, just be open to whatever the possibilities and the timing might be.
Yeah, sure. I mean, when you think about it, if you look at like 3 years ago, did you know where you'd be today? Maybe not, right? So 3 years from now, that person could be really clutch for what we want. So moving on to like more personal experiences, being that I've been a woman of color in corporate America for quite some time now, I've gone through my own, I've had to go through some adversity and being in the workplace. So I'd love to understand from all of you, what have you employed earlier on in your career to get through that, and how has that evolved for you now? Maybe anyone can start.
I think I'll take that one. I think for someone like myself who has had the opportunity to only work within corporate organizations, I think one thing I learned a few years ago was I'm just learning how to remove the emotion from situations. You're gonna have a bad day, you're gonna have a great day, but you have to remember your purpose. You have to remember what you're waking up every day to do, and I pride myself on being the best at what I do. Like that's what it is for me. So I think the other part of it, in terms of, for me, oftentimes I am the only person of color on my TA team. If there's no one else recruiting who looks like me. And I think I always carve out a space for myself that makes me very unique. I'm great and this is why, or this is my approach, or have you always learning or finding a way to introduce a new process, a new tactic. So being innovative is something I think that keeps me going, that kind of allows me to be better and be stronger at what it is I want to take on. So I really learn how to remove the emotion from situations, come to the job every day prepared. Even if I've been there 10 years, I'm prepared and I'm ready to go. And thinking of ways to just remain cutting edge. How do I stay sharp?
Yeah.
And that for me is important because I could possibly recruit anywhere, but I want to be able to do it better every single time. And I think the only way I continue to stay sharp is by staying engaged, being curious, building new relationships, and taking intelligent risks.
Yeah.
So those are some of the things that I think are important for me to keep pushing forward.
Yeah, and I agree with what Alicia's saying, because quite frankly, sometimes you have to change and reset your career in order to stay fresh and relevant. And so my personal story was, I was in the magazine business, I was an associate publisher, group publisher for many years, but a business that was shrinking, right? Getting smaller. Great brands, but getting smaller. I had to take a less than lateral move, leveraging my skill sets as a Hispanic marketing expert, as a sales expert, but being a director role, right, versus being in senior management, just to make sure A, I can let my sales skills translate, but B, I really wanted to take a deep dive in the world of audio and digital and become a technology expert. And it was so worth it as I look back these past couple of years. It was so worth it to reset now. It was hard, very hard, because Pandora was a different culture than I was used to, right? And so don't be afraid to make a change. If you have the vision that this could work out for you, I would say set the goal and go after it.
Yes, yes. To add to those brilliant gems and to what I know Angelina will also drop a brilliant gem on us, keep calm and carry on. Like it's overplayed now because it was like everywhere at one point, but it's hold it close to your heart. Keep calm and carry on. No matter what is going on, stay calm and just keep going. Find a cohort of people that you can rely on. Find a group of people where you can be interdependent on each other. That will get you through. One of the things that Angelina said earlier that really resonated with me was that, especially for people of color, the onus is always on us in terms of, well, you need to be better, and you need to learn how to better interview, and you need to get more education, even though you're coming with all of this, and we see our counterparts coming with significantly less. And one of the things, or one of the ways rather, that CUP approaches professional development is it's not about you need to be better at whatever it is that you're doing. We're gonna make you strong so that emotionally you can get through and you can push through to that next step. And we're gonna provide you with a group of people that you're gonna get strong with, and they're gonna be your lifelong friends. So find that group of people, whoever they are, that are always going to build you up, that you can be honest with, that you can be vulnerable with, scared with, that you can vent to, and they will always be your true north.
Yeah, and people will challenge you. Sometimes you can have friends or colleagues that fight with you, disagree with you. You can only tolerate so much, but it's good to have somebody with an opposing point of view, so you can say, maybe this person could be right.
Yeah. Absolutely. You need those friends to put you up there.
And then just one more thing I wanted to mention too, what you were saying about just translating your skills too. It sometimes to get to that next level, it means a complete career change. And for me personally, I don't have a business degree. Both of my degrees are in philosophy. So I was working in corporate and I was like, well, how do I what am I offering? I'm smart and I know I can do things, and I know I'm really good at certain things, but I don't know how to sell myself. And one of my mentors once told me, well, philosophy is critical thinking. Critical thinking is strategy. You are a strategist. Start focusing on corporate development. Start focusing on strategic sales. Start focusing on things that are going to allow you to use your brain. And that's what I do now. But I had to pivot, and I had to seek out a mentor and a sponsor in order to show that to me. So I would say the same thing. If you're stuck and if you're not really knowing, well, how does this thing that I have translate to what I want to do, start talking to some folks and they'll help you figure it out.
I'm really glad you brought up that point, because I also was a liberal arts major, poli-sci undergrad, and when I was working at ESPN, everyone was always trying to figure out, how were you a business analyst at ESPN with a poli-sci background? You're supposed to be a lawyer. But you do have to be able to position yourself well and tell that story of how you make it all work and make it fit. And for me, it was like political science is really understanding how to convey a message, and that's what sales and marketing is. I'm doing it, like finding out how to really tell that story in interviews is important. In terms of roadblocks as a woman of color, so similar to what Alicia was saying, is I found myself so often in rooms where I was one of the only, and sometimes it could be so frustrating hearing things they talked about. I have a distinct memory of being at work right around the time the Freddie Gray incident happened, and some of my coworkers complaining about how protests shouldn't stop baseball games, and just like all those awkward, uncomfortable moments that frankly were really exhausting. And I think the most important thing is to just always, you do have to stay engaged, right? Because one of my coworkers offends me at a lunch, that doesn't mean I stop going to lunches. Because guess what? If I stop going to lunches, I stop hearing about opportunities, I stop hearing the debriefs, I stop hearing whatever important information I need to know. So finding a way to build up that resiliency and be okay to speak up in a political way when I'm not comfortable with the conversation was really a key skill that I had to develop, and that's one that I would really encourage. And then also sometimes finding ways to relate. So I was in a CUP. I encourage all of you to look at being a CUP fellow. I was a CUP fellow in 2014. And that opened up a new network for me and new opportunities. So I got to be in places. I didn't grow up playing golf. I grew up in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn. And when my coworkers were talking about certain things, sometimes I felt so out of the loop. But guess what? CUP had people that did golf outings, or we went to the Hamptons and all this stuff that I didn't really necessarily have. So then I could join the conversation and relate more to my coworkers when those conversations came up. So think about how do you expand your point of view, because you do have to be engaged and you do have to build those relationships.
I'm curious, so I love what you said around, it's great that CUP was a great resource for you, but in that moment with you and your company, how did you keep yourself accountable to make sure that you were doing that? Like, being able to speak up in that room and making yourself, even though when you were scared to do it. So was there a way that you were doing to practice, ways of keeping yourself accountable to doing that?
Yeah, well, I mean, part of that has just always been a natural piece of my personality, but I will say coaching, and I've been growing up, if any of you know New York, I grew up between Bed-Stuy and then later in East Flatbush, but I commuted almost 2 hours to the Upper East Side. So by the time I was in 7th grade, I had already been called the N-word by my Upper East Side counterparts, and I have a long history of experience of being one of the only, and I do think that has come into play with how I've learned. In the beginning, it used to be like, oh, I'm gonna snatch your hair out, but now, what it's for me is I have some more polish, and I know how to express myself, and it is training. I have worked with executive coaches. My mom got me my first executive coach for my 25th birthday. Columbia MBA, studied org behavior. Like, that was the kind of investment I had, or learning to apply to programs like CUP helped me to, in that moment, keep calm and carry on and not jump across the table and lose my job.
Let's say it together. Keep calm. Carry on. There we go.
Well, since we are on the topic of leveling up, we'd love to transition to some of those questions. So with that said, for a recruiter's point of view, Alicia, I'd love to understand, like, what are some creative ways you can tell us to get us to get a job, whether or not we are currently looking actively or if we may be open to some opportunities?
Oh boy, how do we approach this one? Okay, so creative ways, I guess, to market yourself or let others know that you're looking. Clearly, of course, I think a lot of it is building relationships to some extent, and that I think you can start doing that in the networks you already own today. Be that someone you work with, someone you work out with. There's no harm in asking someone, well, hey, what do you do? And how long have you been there? So that sense of curiosity, or starting to have conversations with others like yourself, or just, to yourself. well, what do I want to do next? So there has to be this thought, right? That, well, I think I want to make a change, or I think I want to know what people do at Spotify or at MSNBC, and how do I get there? So there's no harm. I encourage people to do this all the time. There is no harm in engaging with a recruiter, regardless of how you found them, be it an email blast that came to you, that came to 1 million people and you happen to be on the list, or you've come across someone on LinkedIn who you think is super interesting and you want to know what they do and how you can get to where they are or where they're at. I think recruiters should welcome exploratory conversations. This is not a phone call or a Skype, a video message about, video call about how do I get the job, but not how we're, like, are you hiring, but in the event you were, if I wanted to make a move, what would I have to do? What steps should I take? So taking an opportunity to have a consultative conversation, to get information, ask the right questions, and now through that, hopefully you have a resource. So I think that's something I always found impressive, and I think that's something that I find to be very valuable. And you have to make it unique. Don't cookie cutter blast a message to 100 recruiters and hope that maybe one person will respond. It has to be genuine. I think when you come prepared to conversations, again, with a plan, a certain level of interest and passion, people are more inclined to take you seriously. I think that's one unique way that I don't think enough people leverage, because they're like, oh, well, no one's going to respond, or I don't want to use LinkedIn, or you have to dismiss this way of thinking. You should always use the things you have at your fingertips that are easiest to leverage to get the things that you want. For sure. And of course, opportunities like this, networking, someone said it earlier, it'd be foolish of you to leave here tonight and not walk away with at least 5 contacts. You have to build your network. You shouldn't be shy about those things. You have to put it out there, speak it into existence, and you'd be surprised what will come back to you. What I've learned being a recruiter is that the recruiting world is so small. It's insane. I literally come across applications and resumes. I'm like, oh my God, I used to work with this person. Or, oh my gosh, she interviewed me 5 years ago, now she's looking. She didn't hire me, but now she's looking. Recruiter revenge, just kidding, I wouldn't do that. What you find is that you want to put yourself in a place where you want to be seen and you want to build relationships and get the answers to those burning questions. How do I get this job? What do I need to do? Or I've interviewed 100 times, no one's called me back. And there's so many nuances that apply to that, but you have to be creative.
I love that. And I think it's being proactive, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
You don't want to wait when you have to find a new job. You might as well know what's out there and what you could like, what something really is, and you're not making assumptions as to what job it's like that or the company's like that.
Right.
That's somebody. But I know, Angelina, you wanted to share with us on your creative way.
So there's 2 things quickly that come to mind. When I was graduating business school, before I was ready, I knew the sales cycle for media roles, and often in banking, for instance, they might offer you a job in October and you're set and you don't have to, you just enjoy the rest of the year. But in media, that's not typically the case. They fill in on an as-needed basis. And so one of the things I did, and I wasn't sure specifically what roles I wanted, I made a spreadsheet on LinkedIn with every company and brand I like just anything I like. Where I'm like, oh, I like their brand, I like their commercials, I like whatever it is about them. Then I searched the company on LinkedIn, found anyone who I had any sort of affiliation with, because LinkedIn will tell you all kinds. Oh, that person's an AKA from the South. I'm from New York, but I went to school in the South. So when I had a message, it was like I saw you were at this chapter, whatever, like very to the point. This is why I want to connect with you. And I made it a thing on my calendar where starting in December, leading up into graduation, I had 20-minute phone calls with folks from all of the companies in my spreadsheet. So that's a lot of work, and it's a good thing to do when you're in school, but I would say take that same level of just hunger and apply it to, if there's companies you're interested in working for, develop those relationships. I would say you went to my school, I'm going to reach out to this person that worked at Google and went to Davidson so I can know about the culture and get it in. And don't just reach out to only recruiters. If that person is an executive, that can be great. I was interested in sports at the time. I ended up going to ESPN, but I reached out to an executive at the NBA who went to Davidson, which is where I went to undergrad, and he set up a day of informationals for me with executives from all across the organization. So a lot of different opportunities like that came from me reaching out, being bold, which I encourage, salesy, I encourage you to be thinking about. And then the other quick thing I would tell you is don't take no for an answer. So when I was ready, when I was at ESPN, I was happy, it was great, but I saw this role at Viacom, and it was a digital business development role. It required 5 years as a minimum of experience. They put 5 to 7. They wanted someone with an investment consulting background or who had worked in finance because the position was really analytical. Now, I hadn't done either, and I didn't have 5 years of experience. I had about 2, but I knew that I had done that role. Like I had done the equity research and had done all the analytical pieces. And so I applied and I got rejected. So I applied again. And they were like, no, for real, like you're rejected. But then I reached out to my friend who worked at Viacom, who I'd met at a NAMIC meeting, networking, exchanging information, just casually met her. And she said, oh, they actually posted that job in our BEAT, which is their Black Employee Network. They are trying to get outreach to more people of color. She forwarded my resume to the BEAT network, who forwarded it to the recruiter, and the recruiter emailed me and said, thank you so much, you're not qualified. Oh, but now I had an email address. It wasn't just a bounce back. So I emailed back and I said, I understand why you might think that, but these are the kinds of projects I worked on. I did this, this, and this, and I had a bullet of exactly what I did that was aligned with what that job description is. The next day, we had a phone call. Guess who got the job over all the other
And just to reinforce that, like I would immediately email, like, oh my gosh, she's ready. So be prepared. You have to be prepared. You're setting up this time. You're eager. You're hungry. You want a new job. Okay, so you're given the opportunity. What are you going to do with it? You have to come prepared to have these. You just have to be enthusiastic about it. You have to really want it. And I think being able to highlight your accomplishments and quickly fire off your transferable skills, because recruiters have but so much time. People in general only have but so much time. So think about, well, how am I going to make this worth their time? So those are some of the things you really have to remember. Just being ready.
I love it. Yeah. So be prepared. Don't take no. And be confident in yourself. Right? Sure. So I'd love to open it up to you all. I think we have a few minutes, and Chantel's like, so I'll take a few questions from the audience for these ladies. I'll help me out who you need to speak with if you wanted to be on a company level where it is an employee resource group. Something that was told to me a long time ago when I was very early in my career as a recruiter. One of my mentors at Yelp told me, find the problem opportunity with the company and find the solution to that problem. And so I feel like there's a problem opportunity for you, and find that opportunity, whether it's the HR person, a manager that could possibly give you the opportunity to say yes to building an employee resource group. And an employee resource group does not have to be 30 people. We started at 10, I think, at Yelp. And I think it's just that allows you to, one, really give each other the support that you need within the workplace. And then two, when you know there are hiring initiatives with the company, right, then that's when you get to bring your network in. So I'd love to talk to you about that after as well and figure out what is the best way to go about it. But again, I think just finding the right person that can help you make it happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question?
I have a question. Yeah. My question is on career pivoting, when you don't necessarily have the experience that the organization is asking for. So Angelina, you mentioned you pivoted or you applied for that role where you only had 2 years of experience, it required 7, but what about the instance where you don't necessarily have the required skill set that the position requires? You have transferable skills, but sometimes when you're submitting your resume to a, I don't know if it's, I assume that it's to not a real person. That's what I'm assuming, because companies are getting hundreds of resumes a day, but what do you do to stand out? How do you get your resume in front of someone, the hiring manager?
I think Alicia might be best to answer, but I'll just quickly share one piece of feedback. So in that instance, I knew I had done that job. It wasn't just transferable skills. I actually had done the bullets that were on those lists, and I had gotten promoted after a year at ESPN. Like, I had done it well. I think if I was looking for something to pivot into a new industry where I didn't have the exact skills, I would consider how good is my network, and does someone really believe in me to take what could be perceived as a risk and use my sales skills to position myself for it, or I would have to take potentially what did you call it, a less than lateral move. So maybe start at a lower position until I develop those skills. And sometimes starting at a lower position, if you have transferable skills and years of work experience, you can get promoted above a level once you've proven that you do well in that role.
I think a lot of that too is, I say this all the time, you're looking at the JD, job description, and you're looking at your resume, and you're like, man, I can't connect one dot here. How do I make this happen? And sometimes it does require taking a step back. And it might not be what you want to do, as that might mean, oh my gosh, I have to invest more time. I might have to take a less than desirable salary offer. But if that's what you need to do to get to where you have to be, then that's what you'll probably have to do. And yes, hundreds of people apply to one opportunity, and sometimes there is just one position to fill. And I can tell you from the recruiter side of things, if there's 100 applicants and I've gone through 35, and of those 35, I have 10 who are A players, I might not get to the balance of those applications, truthfully speaking, because that's one role amongst a rec load of 20 maybe. So when you see an opportunity, and it's strategy is, you must apply strategy when you're looking for a job opportunity. If a role's been open 30 plus days, what's going on? I guess they haven't found who they need as yet. Or maybe they found someone and things fell through. But you can imagine if a role's been open 30 plus days and now your applicant 200, what's the likelihood that they might see my application? Yeah. So looking at the health of a role, the time, how long has it been open, it's rough when you're on the other side and you want to understand what's going on. But if you have a contact, use that contact.
So to that I was going to say, I'm a big believer of getting in front of people. Like, I believe I can get in front of almost anyone or someone who knows someone, right? And one might argue, well, you've been in the business a while, so you have more contacts. I didn't know anybody at Pandora. And all of a sudden, a client was talking to me about the fact that they have this big multicultural business. She decides to call the chief revenue officer saying, you need to get some insights from Rosie, because she knows the multicultural market. So here I am having breakfast with this person, thinking that I'm going to educate him. He's like, you don't understand, we have a huge multicultural business. Anyway, so he tried to set me straight, and he did. But anyway, I say this to say, right afterwards, at the end of breakfast, he said, we have to find a spot for you. And I was like, oh my God, I was like, pinching myself, like, is this happening? Because on paper, I would have never gotten a job, just because I wasn't in technology for a long time. So if you can get in front of contacts, to your point, it makes a difference. I'll just close with this. 42nd Street in Park, Pershing Square, that's my second office, if you guys know that. So I usually have breakfast, I do an 8 a.m., I do a 9 a.m., quick breakfast. I'm always networking, not just when I'm looking, but just in general, to stay connected to people. I think that's important too.
You have to take a non-traditional approach to the job hunt. You cannot sit in front of your laptop and think this is the only way I'm going to find a job. You have to get out there. You have to.
And if you have absolutely no experience where you want to go, because that happens, if you want to just completely shift and you're having a difficult time even finding contacts, I know we're all busy, consider volunteering. Consider finding an organization or even a company that is focused on what it is that you want to do and going and helping them out. And then boom, you've got a contact who can talk about your work and what it is that you do. And now you also have an applied skill set, which even though you weren't getting paid for it, you can put that on a resume. And that might help you get a little further along while you're trying to pivot.
And I just want to give a big shout out to someone who's given me one of my first breaks in sales, Lisa Fairborn. I was a marketer, I I talked to her, we had lunch, and she hired me.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for your perspective, for the knowledge, and for empowering all of us here today.
Right.